Narcissism is perhaps one of the most overused terms these days. It's often conflated with just abusiveness or being a jerk. And there is a ton of misinformation about narcissism online these days because of that, because people take it to just mean, oh, this person is a jerk, so let me talk about jerks. It often has nothing to do with actual narcissism. So I came across some TikToks about narcissistic abuse that, in addition to being incredibly misinformed, were absolutely hilarious, and I thought I would share some of them today and just sort of discuss why they are not accurate. So let's dive into it. All right, let's watch some narcissism misinformation. Okay, so the caption says, narcissistic abuse survivors rub their feet together over and over. It's called cricketing. It's a powerful trauma-soothing response. The body repeats this motion to create a pleasant distraction from the nonstop thoughts. Yes, this is sometimes called cricketing. It's sometimes also called stimming. It's sometimes also called body-focused repetitive behaviors. It can be what this person is saying. It can be sort of a self-soothing mechanism because it sort of releases pent-up energy and emotion. It's kind of the same concept as babies sucking on a pacifier to help soothe themselves for sleep. Kind of the same as the concept of like grinding your teeth at night when you're feeling really anxious. And that could indicate a trauma reaction, or it could just indicate, anxiety symptoms or stress. Certainly it doesn't need to be specifically narcissistic abuse trauma, which I do not love as a term. Narcissistic abuse is often emotional abuse, psychological abuse in the techniques that people reference, but there's sort of this assumption that the person causing that abuse is somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. It could be self-soothing. It could be caused by trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be caused by trauma, but it certainly isn't only caused by trauma created by narcissists either. It could also be, like I said, a body-focused repetitive movement, which is associated with things like OCD. I do this, and I do have some other body-focused repetitive behaviors. Ever since I was a little girl, I always picked at the skin along my cuticles. Every time I have short nails, I do that. That's why for the longest time I had long nails. Now that I'm about to be a mom, can't do that anymore. And that is why my fingers are bleeding. Also, since I was a little girl, I would pick at the skin along the sides of my arms. There were phases when I would pick a lot at like my pores on my nose. Sometimes people do things like trichotillomania, which is pulling out their own hairs. And it's been theorized that there could be a self-soothing component there as well. That is this sort of like undercurrent of anxiety that you're trying to get that pent-up energy out. But it also could be to do with the fact that people with OCD or obsessive compulsive tendencies, their brains work a little bit differently in that there's just this very repetitive nature in order for things to feel right that we see with compulsions and body-focused repetitive behaviors alike. So it could be that. It could also be a sign of restless leg syndrome or anemia or iron deficiency. During pregnancy, I realized that I was becoming anemic and I had a lot of restless legs and I wanted to just like constantly keep them moving because it just felt like they just couldn't sit still. This could also be a form of stimming associated with other types of neurodivergence like autism spectrum disorder or ADHD, or it could just be normal. A lot of people who don't have any of the things I mentioned, don't have any mental health condition or health condition, do cricketing just as a way of like soothing themselves before bedtime. And in all of these different cases that I mentioned, trauma, anxiety, OCD, medical issue, autism, ADHD, has nothing to do with narcissism. Certainly someone could be causing you stress or causing you trauma that then causes you to do this behavior. But this is a very, very loose, tangential relationship between the two. So I find that the way this is framed, like the words on screen, they're just kind of lacking nuance. A more accurate way of putting it would be, this is sometimes called cricketing or stimming or body-focused repetitive behaviors or self-soothing. It's associated with a number of different mental health conditions, or just normal self-soothing behavior. And I think the reason this kind of misinformation is potentially harmful is it really challenges people to see a victim complex where there is none. Someone could see this and be like, oh my God, I do this at nighttime. That must mean that I am a narcissistic abuse survivor. Let me try to rack my brain and think about who in my life is a narcissist who has done this to me. When really it could be a perfectly normal reaction, or it could be caused by something else altogether. But with pages like this that are focused on narcissism, all roads lead back to narcissism, and all roads lead back to you are somehow a victim, even when the behavior being shown in the video has quite nothing to do with being victimized. And I actually recognize this content creator. He frequently makes videos that I find to be inaccurate. So the next video we're going to watch is also from the same guy. So according to the last video, I'm a narcissistic abuse survivor, but according to this one, I'm a narcissist. Yeah, no, I hate to say it, you guys are going to think I'm disgusting, but I do some of these. And I will preface this by saying that I am a very clean, tidy person, but I do have certain quirks that just I don't understand why they're not okay. One of them is, leaving kitchen cabinets slightly open. I also leave caps open on bottles. And the reason for this is with the bottles that I'm not very strong. I don't have very good hand grip strength. And so when I close it all the way, it's just much harder for me to open. And I've gotten in trouble so many times over this because I will have, put a cap on something and left it on the table, and then someone will pick it up and they will get liquid all over them. And I'm not doing it intentionally. I'm not doing it to make that person get wet. I'm not trying to be an asshole. It's just when my husband, for instance, closes a cap for me on a bottle, I literally can't open it. I literally can't. The cabinet thing is because I try not to make a lot of sound throughout the house. Sometimes when I'm moving around the house, I don't want to engage in a conversation, especially if it's in my family home where there are, a lot of people hanging around. And I just don't want them to know that I'm in the room, and I don't want to make a sound that's going to alert them to come in and have a conversation with me when I'm just trying to grab a quick snack or something. I'm not doing it to be an asshole. I'm not doing it to drive anyone crazy. There are reasons why people do these things that go beyond just they're a narcissist actively trying to aggravate you. Also, the tissues thing. Y'all are gonna think this is so disgusting, but yeah, I reuse tissues until I've reused every inch of them. Because I'll often use half of a tissue, and then I know I'm gonna need it again later. Half of it is still good, and I don't wanna be wasteful. I'm not trying to be gross. I'm not trying to make a mess for people. I'm not trying to drive them crazy. I'm just trying to not be wasteful, dude. But with pages like this one, all roads lead back to narcissism. Every behavior that pisses you off can be attributed to someone's narcissism. And this is kind of what happens when you fixate on a certain topic and then you see it everywhere. And it's also what happens when you form a really narrow niche in your content creation and you're also posting a lot. This guy looks like he records 5 shorts per day or something based on the outfits he's wearing. At some points, you're going to run out of topics and just start grasping at straws. And I think we need to be a little bit careful about reading into people's intentions and sort of projecting malintent when we could just ask people, hey, why don't you close cupboards all the way? Or why do you reuse tissues? Or why don't you close bottle caps all the way? If you were to actually ask somebody that, you might learn that they actually have a reason for that, maybe even a trauma-based reason. And it's not that they are trying to piss you off. Let's keep going.
I'm a narcissist. Yes, the experience of being with me will make you feel trapped, because you are. I tricked you. You thought you were getting into a heavenly space, and you found yourself awake in a hell realm. You're in my dungeon. I dare you to try and leave. Yeah, I dare you to try and leave. See what happens. if you try and defy me, if you try and get out of this trap that I've placed you inside of. Oh, you're suffocating. Oh, you don't like it. Is it uncomfortable? Good. It's supposed to be. It'll get easier when you learn your place.
This is another person whose face I have absolutely associated with narcissism misinformation on the internet. I'm pretty sure this guy is capitalized off of hate trains against women like Meghan Markle, if I remember correctly. So kind of interesting. He markets himself as a narcissism expert, but it's not clear to me that he actually has any qualifications that would make him a narcissism expert. When you look at his website and you go to his About section, it says Richard Grannon is passionate about helping others defend themselves, get back on their feet, and finally free themselves from narcissistic abuse, drawing on numerous forms of psychotherapy, including NLP, cognitive behavioral therapy, Zen meditation, psychodynamics, and more. Grannon's unique methodology offers a direct, practical solution to help narcissistic abuse victims reclaim their self-worth. He was a self-defense instructor, worked in the security industry, taught police and soldiers how, I think it's meant to say, to deal with the mental stress with combat. Many of those he taught had struggles at home. It grew from there. Yeah, so I don't see on here if he's some sort of therapist, if he's licensed to be a therapist, but if he is providing numerous forms of psychotherapy, then that is absolutely something he should have as a license. I can tell you based on his website, he seems very skilled at marketing. Kudos to him for that. But marketing without actually knowing what you're talking about, or marketing with overpromising or practicing outside of your wheelhouse is kind of a dangerous recipe. Now, as for the video itself that we watched, I find that this heaven and hell language that often shows up in a lot of these narcissism videos is very telling, because it is very much an example of the defense mechanism called splitting, when you divide the world into either all good experiences or people or whatever it is, or all bad. Ironically, this sort of splitting can be a sign of a cluster B personality disorder like narcissism or like borderline personality disorder. Or sometimes it's just a sign that somebody maybe has experienced trauma, has experienced abuse at the hands of someone who has a cluster B personality disorder themselves, and they're just not very far along in their trauma healing journey. Because if you are demonizing or dehumanizing or devaluing a person, let alone an entire group of people, then there's a lot of black and white thinking going on there. There's a lot of perspective taking that needs to be instilled that to me just doesn't really indicate a person is very healed. Now, the next video I'm about to show you has kind of a similar concept. So remember this like very demonizing, dehumanizing attitude.
Narcissists really demonic? Who the fuck really knows? There are definitely things about them that will send chills up your spine and put a lump in your throat if you're literally watching something inside of them start taking over. The first time I saw the black eyes of a narcissist, I was convinced I made that shit up in my head. No way do people's eyes just turn black as the night sky, but well turns.
I will be reusing this, and there's nothing you guys can do about it.
No way do people's eyes just turn black as the night sky, but well, turns out I didn't, as it legit happens. It's not creepy enough to now suddenly have the not so incredible hawk staring at you like a predator to its prey, sending that warning it's about to be game on. After they've unleashed the beast, will calmly look at you standing there more terrified than a deer in headlights. They'll get this shit-eating grin on their face and start laughing. Not their typical laughter, no. This is a more maniacal staccato component to it, that of Freddy Krueger or the Joker. So if you ever see eyes that have you doubting whether there's a soul inside, take heed to your intuition just trying to tell you, because nothing warm and fuzzy is going to be coming of this soulless creature. Horror movies are one thing, but these people, they're the true fucking nightmare and will cost you a shit ton more than a movie ticket and popcorn. Focus on you. Fuck the narcissist.
A quick word on the black eyes that she's describing. I've talked about this in a video before, but I actually know exactly what she's talking about. There is somebody I know who meets criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, and when they get angry, their eyes do literally turn black. But what that means is just that their eyes are dilating because they are in fight, flight, or freeze. Typically, for narcissists, It's fight response. This is definitely not only specific to narcissism though. If somebody suddenly gets a feeling of anxiety, for instance, and they're not a narcissist, their eyes might black over as well. But it has nothing to do with being soulless or demonic. There is a physiological reason for it. And again, we hear this splitting, this super demonizing, dehumanizing language being used to describe a group of people, which personally, I think we should never describe an entire group of people in dehumanizing language. I think that can lead to some pretty bad things. And again, it just reminds me of when people are splitting like this, it indicates that usually they're in the earlier stages of healing from abuse. In the earlier stages of healing, you sometimes need to just be validated and to vent about how fucked up it was what happened to you, and to just sort of marinate in that feeling. Further on in healing from abuse, it's important to take a more dialectical approach, to stop putting people into black or white boxes, start seeing a more nuanced version of reality. Last video we're gonna watch, this one is short, so let's take a look. Is this the Jaws soundtrack? Okay, look, whatever you think about Meghan Markle, I'm not saying she's the most likable person in the world. The hate train against her is so stupid, and body language analysis is just not accurate. It's often what is pointed to as evidence of her being an evil psychopath, narcissist, blah, blah, blah. What people point out in these body analysis videos is typically just signs of anxiety. And they'll usually say, this is a sign that somebody is lying. Which there's a component of truth to it, because when somebody is lying, unconsciously their body is in dissonance and they display these very subtle micro expressions of anxiety. However, there are a lot of other reasons for those micro expressions aside from somebody is lying. Could just be they're anxious. It could be you ask them a question that maybe hits on a sore spot, but it could also be they've already been burned so many times before with that topic when it's been brought up that now they're just nervous to talk about it. They themselves could be experiencing a trauma reaction. They might be feeling socially anxious. They might be just a little bit socially awkward. So many reasons. And it's so important to not read intentions into body language. Now, is it important to pay attention to body language? Yes, absolutely. Therapists do it all the time in therapy. But the key there is to point it out to the client, to ask them about it. Hey, I noticed when we started talking about your mom, you started looking down at your feet. Can you tell me about that? Better understanding them instead of projecting your own intentions onto them. Reading intentions into people's actions or micro-expressions is often just a form of the cognitive distortion called mind reading. The people making these videos saying, this is a sign that this person's a narcissist because she blinked weird, she was smug looking. You are acting like you can read this person's mind, which you can't. And honestly, in a lot of them, I think you're projecting, because you're being actually really hateful yourself, but you're accusing this person of being hateful for not smiling in the way that you want them to. And these are often incredibly misogynistic, right? Like the body language analysis of men are usually, wow, how charismatic, let's learn from them. But the body analysis of women is, she's a lying psychopath and she's terrible. And so I think when narc talk and misogyny slop converge is when you get videos like this one. Okay, that was fun. I hope you had a good laugh about this, maybe learned a little something. Be careful what you learn out there, because narc talk is not a very good source of accurate information. I will just leave it there. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week, and I'll see you soon.